Seduction by Jean Baudrillard. Read by Stеaдyй Делта. Chapter 3. The Political Destiny of Seduction.
Take me around the world one more time.
This is why there are no rituals of transgression. The very expression makes no sense, especially when applied to the festival. The latter has proved very problematic for our revolutionaries. Is the festival a transgression or regeneration of the law? An absurd question, for rituals, including the ritual liturgy of the festival, belong neither to the domain of law nor its transgression, but to that of the rule. The same applies to magic. We are constantly interpreting what falls under the rule in terms of the law. Thus, magic is seen as an attempt to outwit the laws of production and hard work. Primitives have the same utilitarian ends as us, but in order to realize them, they would rather avoid rational exertion. Magic, however, is something very different. It is a ritual for the maintenance of the world as a play of analogical relations, a cyclical progression where everything is linked together by their signs. An immense game. Rule governs magic, and the basic problem is to ensure, by means of ritual, that everything continues to play thus, by analogical contiguity and creeping seduction. It has nothing to do with linear relations of cause and effect. The latter, our way of understanding the world, is objective but unsettled, for it has broken the rule. Magic does not seek to fool the law. It doesn't cheat, and to judge it as such is absurd. One might just as well dispute the arbitrariness of a game's rule in terms of the objective givens of nature. The same simplistic and objectivistic misunderstanding occurs with gambling. Here, the objective would be economic, to become rich without exerting oneself. The same attempt to skip steps, as in magic. The same transgression of the principle of equivalence and hard work, which rules the real world. The claim, then, is that gambling's truth is to be found in the trick it plays on value. But one is forgetting here the game's power of seduction. Not just the power one experiences when momentarily carried away, but the power to transmute values that comes with the rule. In gambling, money is seduced, deflated from its truth. Having been cut off from the law of equivalences, it burns, and the law of representation. Money is no longer a sign or representation once transformed into a stake. And a stake is not something one invests. As an investment, money takes the form of capital. But as a stake, it appears in the form of a challenge. Placing a bet has as little to do with placing an investment as libidinal investment with the stakes of seduction. Investments and counter-investments, they belong to the psychic economy of drives and sex. Games, stakes, and challenges are the figures of passion and seduction. More generally, all the stuff of money, language, sex, and affect undergo a complete change of meaning depending on whether they are mobilized as an investment or transposed into a stake. The two moments are irreducible. If games had a finality, the only true player would be the cheater. Now, if a certain amount of prestige can be acquired by transgressing the law, there is no prestige in cheating or transgressing a rule. In truth, the cheater cannot transgress the rules since the game, not being a system of interdictions, does not have lines one can cross. One does not transgress a rule, one fails to observe it, and non-observance does not lead to a state of transgression. It brings one back under the jurisdiction of the law. This is the case with the cheater, who denies, or even better, profanes the game's ceremonial conventions for economic reasons, or psychological reasons if he cheats simply for the pleasure of winning, and thereby restores the laws of the real world. By introducing factors of an individual nature, he destroys the game's dual enchantment. If cheating was once punished by death and is still condemned strongly, it is because as a crime it resembles incest, cultural rules being broken to the sole profit of the laws of nature. For the cheater, there is no longer anything at stake. He confuses the stakes with surplus value, but the stakes are what enable one to play, and to turn them into the game's purpose is to abuse one's position of trust. In a similar manner, the rules establish the very possibility of playing, the space within which the sides confront each other. To treat the rules as ends, or as laws or truths, is to destroy both the game and its stakes. The rules have no autonomy, that quality which, according to Marx, characterizes commodities both individually and in general, and is the sacrosanct value of the economic domain. The cheater, too, is autonomous. He establishes a law, his own law, against the arbitrary rules of the rule. This is what disqualifies him, and he is free. This explains his downfall. Moreover, he is rather dreary because he no longer exposes himself to the seduction of games, because he refuses the vertigo of seduction. By way of hypothesis, one might postulate that personal advantage is only an alibi. In reality, he cheats in order to escape seduction. He cheats because he is afraid of being seduced. The challenge of a game is very different, and games are always a challenge, and not just when played around a table. Consider the American who had the following classified advertisement printed in the paper: "Send me $1," and then received tens of thousands of dollars. He did not promise anything. He was not, therefore, swindling anyone, nor did he say, "I need $1." Nobody would have ever given him $1 under such circumstances. Somewhere he had let float the off chance of a miraculous exchange, something more than an equivalence, a bluff. He was offering the public a challenge. What sort of sublime transaction were they negotiating when instead of buying $1 worth of ice cream, they sent in their money? They never really believed they would receive $10,000 in return. In truth, they took up the challenge in their own way, and it was as valid as any other, for they were being offered a wishbone, where one wins on both counts. One never knows, it might work. $10,000 in the mail, in which case one has received a sign of the gods' favor. Which gods? Those who had printed the ad. If it doesn't work, it is because the obscure instance that gave me the sign did not take up my challenge. So much the better. Psychologically, I have beaten the gods. A double challenge. The con man challenges the sucker, and the latter challenges fate. If he is overwhelmed by fate, he is in the clear. One can always count on culpability to look for ways of being exorcised. But it really isn't a question of guilt. To send $1 in response to the absurd challenge of the advertisement is the sacrificial response par excellence. It can be summed up as, there must be something behind this. I will summon the gods to respond or else to disappear. And reducing the gods to nothing is always a source of pleasure. Stakes and challenges, summoning and bluffing. There is no question of belief in all this. Moreover, one never believes in anything. It is never a question of believing or not believing, no more than for Santa Claus. Belief is an absurd concept of the same type as motivation, need, instinct, i.e., drive, desire, and God knows what else. Facile tautologies that hide from us the fact that our actions are never grounded psychologically in belief, but in stakes and challenges. It is never a matter of carefully reasoned speculation on existence, on the existence of God or of someone with $1, but of continual provocation, of a game. One does not believe in God, just as one does not believe in chance, except in the humdrum discourses of religion or psychology. One challenges them, they challenge you. One plays with them, and they play with you. And for this, one does not have to believe in them. Thus, faith in the religious sphere is similar to seduction in the game of love. Belief is turned to the existence of God, and existence has only an impoverished residual status, being what is left when all else has been removed, while faith is a challenge to God's existence, a challenge to God to exist, and in return to die. One seduces God with faith, and he cannot but respond, for seduction, like the challenge, is a reversible form, and he responds 100-fold by his grace to the challenge of faith. As with all ritual exchanges, the whole forms a system of obligations, with God being obliged and even compelled to respond, even as he is never compelled to exist. Belief is satisfied with asking him to exist and underwrite the world's existence. It is the disenchanted, contractual form. But faith turns God into a stake. God challenges man to exist, and he can respond to this challenge with his death. And man challenges God to respond to his sacrifice, that is, to disappear in return. One always aspires to something more than mere existence, and something more than an equivalent value. And this something more, the challenge's immoderation compared to the contract, its intemperance compared to the equivalence of cause and effect, is clearly the result of seduction, that of games and magic. If we have experienced this in amorous seduction, why not in our relations with the world? Symbolic efficacy is not an empty concept. It reflects the existence of another form of the circulation of goods and signs, a form far more effective and powerful than economic circulation. What is fascinating about a miraculous win at the gaming tables is not the money. It is the resumption of ties with these other symbolic circuits of unmediated and immoderate bidding, which concern the seduction of the order of things. In the last analysis, there is nothing to prevent things from being seduced like beings. One simply has to find the game's rules. The entire problem of chance appears here. Magic, as a wager, is similar to our games of chance. What is at stake is the particle of value thrown in the face of chance, considered as a transcendent instance, not in order to win its favors, but to dismiss its transcendence, its abstraction, and turn it into a partner, an adversary. The stake is a summons, the game a duel. Chance is summoned to respond, obliged by the player's wager to declare itself either favorable or hostile. Chance is never neutral. The game transforms it into a player and agnostic figure, which is another way of saying that the basic assumption behind the game is that chance does not exist. Chance in its modern rational sense, chance as an aleatory mechanism, pure probability subjected to the laws of probability and not to the rules of a game, a sort of great neutral aleatorium, GNA, the epitome of a fluctuating universe dominated by statistical abstractions, a secularized, disenchanted, and unbound divinity. This kind of chance does not exist in games. They exist to ward it off. Games of chance deny that the world is arranged contingently. On the contrary, they seek to override any such neutral order and recreate a ritual order of obligations, which undermines the free world of equivalences. In this manner, games are radically opposed to the economy and law. They question the reality of chance as an objective law and replace it with an interconnected, propitious, dual, agnostic, and non-contingent universe, a charmed universe, charmed in the strong sense of the term, a universe of seduction. Thus, the superstitious manipulations surrounding games, which many view only in terms of debasement, the resort to magical practices from playing one's birth date to looking for recurrent series, the 11 came up 11 times running in Monte Carlo, from the most subtle winning formulas to the rabbit's foot in one's coat pocket. They all feed on the idea that chance does not exist, that the world is built of networks of symbolic relations, not contingent connections, but webs of obligation, webs of seduction. One has only to play one's hand right. The bettor defends himself at all costs from the idea of a neutral universe of which objective chance is a part. The bettor claims that anything can be seduced, numbers, letters, or the laws that govern their distribution. He would seduce the law itself. The least sign, the least gesture has a meaning, which is not to say that it is part of some rational progression, but every sign is vulnerable to and can be seduced by other signs. The world is held together by unbreakable chains, but they are not those of the law. Here lies the immorality of games, often attributed to the fact that they encourage one to want to win too much too quickly. but this is to give them too much credit. Games are more immoral than that. They are immoral because they substitute an order of seduction for an order of production.